Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you may be. And big welcome to everybody to the Indigenous Women's Leadership, the Next Generation. This is the fourth of the Indigenous Women's series. And we have our youth, our next generation. Today also is a global day to celebrate, honor, and uplift the achievements and efforts of women. We are grateful to all of the women in our lives who give us strength, love, and hope for the future. Today, we will hear and learn from the young women who are leading efforts to heal relationships with the lands and waters by revitalizing languages, knowledge, and teachings. These young women are lending their voices, energy, and strength for social and environmental justice to ensure a bright future for the next generations to come. Before we get started, I'd like to invite Doreen William-Grinder to open us in a good way. So, Chanalya, Doreen.
Bananas, everybody, and Danas Kuyan for those that are away and not in our territory. Sito the Doreen William-Grinder, Hanigutin Basna Bostonias, say in Quale Delia Brigham William, Unisatin Dani, and Sabahele Nabos Hanigutin, seeing tea, but seeing to Sababat Jimmy Bullion, Ellie Nabostonian, and saying to Ellie, Amelia, Char, William, Title Daldani, saying Quilbit, saying to Eliza Brigham, Quilt, Unisatin, Tavish Down, and Letting Cotany, and saying T. Lee, saying Quilbit, Jack Boyd, Letting Cotany, Eccles Chodanius, Gantin Jihai deal no Zakai Ganti relation Gagos Cho Nintin Go Sutata as we call well Su Wanakdalnik Saba Basing Qual Heli Gagos Cho Nagotilnik Go Jeet Gagos Go Su Jikodas in my name is Doreen William. I come from the Tezcotin Nation, one of the Tezcotin communities, Hanigutin. I was born and raised on the land. I was born on the shore of Tesico Lake and the mouth of the river of Tesico. So I am very connected to the land. I feel it within me. Today it's a very important topic after I really kind of read into it of what we were doing, but this is what our nation, all nations, not only ours, but it's something that we have to strongly push towards bringing back our stories of back in the day of what women leadership was like and how we were born into leadership along the way through the stories. One thing about leadership I didn't realize until 5 years ago that when my dad passed, through his stories, I really connected that after my healing of 5 years, that I realized what he was telling me, that each teaching that he, through the stories with my grandma and him, that the things we did, they never really forced us to really sit down and listen to them of what they were saying. They were just testing us to see who would actually take in everything, like what they were talking about and all that. I didn't realize that it was all teaching back in the day, and you know how you are when you're kids, but when you grow up, it all connects. It really connects to what they were saying and trying to teach you. As a lot of women in the matriarchs, we are bred to be able to take on this teaching, breaking those cycles of the residential school and all that in the motherhoods. I find it a struggle some days, but you know, that's one of the things that we have to tie into our programs is breaking the cycle. And to this day that in our communities, we struggle with that. But I would like to take this time to give each and every one of you beautiful young ladies here who are actually finding themselves in leadership and continuing on forth to reconnect with our land, because we have a beautiful backyard that we are not utilizing. And it's amazing how when you're in your backyard on the land, of the little things that you notice, it's either from a dried up leaf to a really old path down through the trees. You don't realize where those paths goes, but those paths they go on and on and on. That's how we live our lives. We just keep on going, trudging through these bushes, trying to figure out who we are and creating that path to our younger generations so that they would thrive and continue on our teachings and our way of life so that our leadership stays strong. And we talk about Western leadership. There are pros and cons with that too, but never let it disconnect you with your actual teachings from your ancestors. A lot of us grew up with very low self-esteem and confidence, but then again, listen and go back to the stories of your grandmas and your fathers, your parents, and through that, it would kind of it would bring back the strength that we hold, because we are life givers, and that's where our strength comes from. I think that's all I need to say. So, Shauna, Marilyn.
The Tanalya, Doreen. And now we would like to invite our beautiful youth, young ladies, to share their stories. And we will have Chuutsqa, Shauna, and Briana, and Jillian. Introduce yourselves, and then after our introductions, we'll go to the storytelling. Tanalya. Chuutsqa.
True, siyak sis chuutsqa, ishqoyak subs, ahad kinquashtakon black subs. I am very happy to be joining in with the youth here today. Myself, I'm an elder millennial, and perhaps having spent most of my youth trying to become a better speaker of Haishkut language, I'm in a happy space to reflect on that journey and what my place is within my Haishkut community of people. We are a group of just under 800 people in the middle of the west coast of Vancouver Island. Closest town would be Tofino, BC. And so I recently found out that the highway to Tofino, was punched through and paved in the 1970s, and then became sort of the tourist hotspot that everybody in BC sort of knows in the last 20 years. So when I was growing up in Hot Springs Cove, at our Haishkut community of about 100 people, it was about 3.5 hours on my dad's boat to go into Tofino, do some shopping at the co-op, and then another 3.5 hours back on the boat as a family. And we would do that every month, 2 or 3 months, depending on the weather or the season. And what I didn't know as a child growing up in my community was that everybody of my parents' age and generation, like everybody who was there, was raised in a residential school close to Tofino. And this is something, that people didn't talk about, because this was an era where people were starting to be able to take control of education by closing down the residential school by vote, and also opening up a school operated by the band itself in community. So children were, the century of being taken away to be raised in an institution was over at this point. And I was totally oblivious to this. So in my sort of growing worldview, I was growing into a world where there was a lot of adults around watching out, taking care. There was older people talking about the importance of our language. There wasn't opportunities to become a speaker of our language, even though we had our own run schools and we had some language in the classroom. But we're still sort of rebuilding capacities to do that, and the number of language learners and our capacity to teach and learn those languages has really increased and sped up actually in the last decade or so. So I'm really happy to join with you all today to listen and learn. And I'm chuutsqa from Hishgred. On to our next youth, Chu.
Ganeshish. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm joining you all from Tsimshian Territory, Terrace, BC. My traditional name is Jihodisti. I'm from the Yanyeti clan of the Taku River. I have, and so I've been a guardian since 2016 for my nation. What is the story? Okay, yeah, and so a little bit of background of my story I'll get into a little bit later, but I started off my youth, like my early teenage years, participating in student exchanges, and I was able to really travel around and do volunteer exchanges. About 10 years ago, I started early childhood education in the Yukon, Whitehorse, Yukon. And it was at that time where I started kind of going off on my own and learning more about my own history. Like I knew about residential schools and I knew a bit of our histories, but I didn't really see how deep of an impact residential schools left with our communities and upon our families. And so in 2016, I moved home to kind of just get away. Like I was at a point in my education where a lot of things started making sense and it was weighing really heavy on my spirit. I came home and I spent a week with my grandma, and I just by chance saw a guardian posting and I applied, and I've been there since. Coming full circle, I'm back currently I'm really interested in climate action, more so Indigenous-led climate action. And so going back to my student exchanges, in 2010-11, I won a scholarship from the Leah Cross Foundation for women, actually, for young women to have equal opportunities and chances. And so I won a scholarship to go on the Antarctic expedition. And so now I've kind of come full circle. And I'm working within climate action and land guardianship. And so who has inspired me along the way? I think I've been thinking about that question a lot, and it's been really impactful being able to have this time to think about that. And so I come from a long, fierce line of Indigenous women, and I'm really grateful for that. I was raised by a single mom. My mother's Denise Yeomans, and I was born with medical issues. And so my mom did an incredible job raising me. I listened to a podcast last night about Indigenous mothers and like grizzly bears, and like my mother is definitely the definition of like a grizzly bear mom. She's really taking care of me. She survived and endured the foster care system, and before her, her mother, my grandmother, who I've spent a majority of my life with, she survived, and she survived 11 years of residential school. And I look back on my childhood and remember spending so much time with her on the land and in her office under her map. She's a mapper. She did a lot of mapping and helped with our land use plan. I come from the Taku River, and we've been able to do a lot of work within our land use plan and land protection. And so now looking back and being able to have the experience I have in my job, I'm looking back and just seeing the incredible work that my First Nation and my family have been able to achieve. And I'm really I'm at an age where I really appreciate that. And so my mother and my grandma have really inspired and helped molded me into who I am. And also my Auntie Sue, Sue Carlick. She's a fierce negotiator and really she was a really key vital role into creating a lot of the space that I'm able to occupy now. And so I got pretty emotional thinking about who inspired me. And so, I'm excited to be here, really excited to share and learn and connect with people. And I will pass the feather on to our next speaker, Ganeshtish.
Tansei, hello. My name is Briana Greer. I live on the traditional and unceded lands of the Tsimshian peoples, specifically the 9 allied tribes of Metlakatla and Lakwalams in Prince Rupert, BC. I am Métis and a member of Métis Nation, British Columbia. I'm Métis on my mom's side and mixed settler ancestry on my dad's side. My Métis roots are from the Red River. And during the Exodus, my ancestors settled in Athabasca, Smith area of Alberta, where 3 generations of my family lived. My great-great-grandparents received their script for Otter Creek, Alberta, where my family lived until my grandpa moved to work and settle in Terrace, British Columbia, where my mom and I were born and raised. Generationally, I'm the first in my family to attend and graduate from university, and my mom and her siblings were the first to graduate from high school. While my grandpa never attended residential or day school, he attended a rural and remote school in Alberta, which was full of racism, where he was bullied and assaulted for being Métis. So my family from that suffered intergenerational problems with alcoholism and addictions. So my mom and I broke that cycle. From 2017 to 2021, I went to the University of Northern British Columbia and completed my Bachelor of Arts. I double majored in political science and global and international studies. And while doing that, I also did a 2-year certificate in public administration. I'm really passionate about policy and political aspects of things like healthcare, environment, and Indigenous issues, which are all very interconnected. So these passions inspired me to apply for my master's in natural resources and environmental studies. I applied for that for fall 2021, and I was accepted into the program. I'm in my 2nd year now. So for my research project, I'm partnered with Les Femmes Michif Otapemsawak, in English, that's the women of the Métis Nation. Otapemsawak means the people who own themselves. So when you translate it literally, it's the women that own themselves. So thought I'd mention that because it's International Women's Day. So my research is exploring how Métis women describe their relationships with climate change and its impacts, looking at the medicine wheel physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to be able to determine the supports and resources our women need for this climate crisis. I'm very involved within the Métis community at the local level. I'm a director and the local women's rep for my local chartered community, and I like to attend provincial and national events when the opportunity arises. The people that inspire me is my community, really is why I am doing the work that I'm doing. So I'm going to pass the torch on to our next participant. Thank you.
Ani Kinawaya, Jillian Indigenous cause, Richimising Donjaba. Hi everyone, my name's Jillian. I come from Chinnasing, also known as Christian Island. It's a small island in Georgian Bay. So I work as the Anishinaabe motivator for Bulls Lake First Nation, and my duties is to motivate, help and support people who want to learn a language or people who are already learning the language. So what I usually do is I create new resources, I find resources for people, and I lead projects and I do events. One of my most recent events was Youth Language Day, so I work a lot with our youth and our elders. I work within Right to Play. I help put language into their programs, their nights, at least once or twice a month. And I come from a family of fluent speakers. Although most of our fluent speakers are much older now, there are some younger ones who are trying to reach out and learn the language as well. So such as me, and I have an older cousin who even had the opportunity to teach the language, and he's teaching our language now. So that's pretty cool. Sorry. My generational place in my family. So my generational place in my family. So I've had a lot of my great grandparents attend residential schools. So I'm generational when it comes to that. I have most of my aunts and uncles and my grandmother's, not my great grandmother, experienced Indian day school. So we went through that as a family. Even my mother had to experience some elements of Indian day school as well. So I had the privilege to be one of the generations that didn't have to go through that kind of abuse directly and that trauma. But I can see how it's not only affected my family, but it's affected my whole community. It's something definitely we're working on healing from, and my family's doing pretty good with it. We work on it and we're really strong. We're a really close-knit family. Although I just could see where our struggles come from all that past we had with our family. But we've come very far, and I'm very proud to be part of my family. I feel like us trying to heal together is what brings us close together. And we don't let things push us down that hard, and we rely on each other. So yeah. I'm from Bulls Lake First Nation, and I work as the Anishinaabe motivator. Thank you. Miigwech.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jillian. Jillian, where on the map of Canada are you approximately?
Georgian Bay, which is Ontario. I can't say exactly where.
Okay, thank you so much. You have leveled our playing field. Very glad to hear that. I was feeling a little bit westerly tipping in, but very thankful for each and every one of you. Amazing young women and the beautiful work that you are doing, you know, with a language, I mean, the lands, the guardians, all of these very important processes, the education that you are carrying with you, the traditional teachings and your families that have guided you and given you strength and honor to stand up and voice your story. I'm so thankful to hear from each and every one of you. So we can move into our storytelling, sharing with with each of you given about 10 minutes, sharing the story of what you have chosen. So we will stay with our same row of panelists, chuutsqa, Shauna, Briana, and Jillian. Oops.
I'm not sure I've decided on a story to tell, but as I listened and heard the stories of the young women here with so much amazing experience to share, it's really easy to appreciate the strength and the diverse talents that our people have, as well as the shared knowledge and understandings that we all have across this continent as First Peoples. And that is something that I was really raised to recognize as important, First Nations viewpoint, because of the era that I was born into. People were just freshly having their eyes open to their freedom, having graduated from those institutions, and a return to living in our ancestral homelands as well, and with the opportunity to shape the understandings of the children of the time. And so what I grew up with was really I think quite aspirational and pretty crazy too, because people didn't really know what sort of the rules of parenting or even the parameters of parenting were. So a lot of my childhood, I don't really remember a whole lot of my day-to-day because it involved a lot of partying and a lot of like really chaotic circumstance in the scope of you're within your home. But then when you go out and see community wide what the overall values are and and understandings, then that's something that was really a shining light for us as a generation to come into the world as Heshkut people with Heshkut feelings and Heshkut thoughts, Heshkut knowledge and connections to the land. And so that was a big inspiration to become somebody who could speak Heshkut language. Although in our history, we don't have like a Heshkut history of teaching people how to become speakers of our language, Heshkut. People were born into it in a natural way. And we don't have a tradition of like second language teaching or second language learning really to draw from. And so I had gone into language learning just as a community member, as a girl, with no particular inheritance beyond being born as a Heshkut person, or no special knowledge other than growing up in my Heshkut community, not knowing if I could become a speaker at all. But I did get two people to agree, and they spent a lot of time with me over the course of 3 years, Angela Galagos and Lawrence Paul, teaching me how to be a speaker of our language. And by the time we were, sort of drawing down, working together, because I had become pregnant with our son, I had reached a speaking level that was making me feel, really happy and really strong. And I was really grateful. So I wanted to throw a big party in town where most of our Heshkut people live because of, work and everything. So in 2014, I sent out an invite to everybody who we knew to be a fluent speaker of Heshkut language, like who was born like since the 20s, 30s, 40s, 1920s, who was born into just hearing and speaking our language before they got taken to residential school. and so who's fluent in our language in that way. And so invited everybody like that, and anybody who wanted to join in and learn, to have a gathering. So we gathered, and I hosted them along with my family, my brothers and sisters, and my immediate family helped to host this gathering for a week. And that started out the formation from our fluent speakers who were gathered there of a fluent speakers committee, and we called ourselves Heshkwit Language Program. So we have been gathering every year, once or twice since 2014, once or twice a year as a language committee. They are the fluent speakers, and as an adult learner and speaker, I mean, I will never move up to fluent speaker level because I wasn't born into a fluent environment of Heshkwit language. But as far as a learner, I can become an advanced learner. And there's plenty of people along on the learning ride with me as well. So in the past several years, we just keep doubling our number of learners who come in from our tribe and start to learn. And what we try to do is we always have a learning environment where some of our fluent speakers are present, and there's only 8 fluent speakers left. So they're all between 77 and 92 years old, and they work with us mostly via Zoom because of the pandemic now. Watching over us and making sure that the stuff that I'm teaching and my cohorts are teaching is correct and a suitable teaching, because our language is comes from a community of ancestral speakers and is being passed through this tiny little time here where we're just like kind of learning from the fluent speakers, and then we're going back into an explosion of our language back into our future learners there. So we want to make sure that we're always together with our fluent speakers when we're passing our language on, that it's going to be recognizable when it comes out in the future. It's going to be recognized by our first speaker of our language. Like if you were the first person on earth that was speaking Heshkwit language on Heshkwit land, you would hear that and say, hey, you're speaking my language. You belong here. You belong to us, Heshkwit. So that's the story I wish to tell, that bringing your language back is happening for a number of communities and a number of people at this time. And it's because of the shift away from, a shift towards having more freedom and rights in our lives. And we've always had really a lot of really talented people, and that's quite clear to me, as always becoming more and more solidified in my mind, the understanding that our first fluent speakers who were raised in places where they were told they were stupid and ugly and all of this stuff was just a complete lack of knowledge of what they were born into and taught and understood. And when it comes to expressing and passing on that knowledge, they're just so brilliant and have so much to share with the world, and it's so enriching to be a part of that stream of knowledge that comes from forever and goes on into forever. And we have a special little phrase called Ekmutnish, which was back in 2014. They established that was going to be our saying. Ekmutnish means both we are ancient people and we are continuing people. Ekmutnish. True.
Nice. Thank you, chuutsqa. I was wanting to ask you a question just to add to that beautiful sharing with the language is so important. And And old language is really important, but how do you uplift other women and youth in your work? You did speak to some of that, but just to give that another little boost, how do you uplift others?
Yeah, it's really kind of it's a pretty natural movement here for us to be trying to uplift the next generation, because they really do it themselves with their strength and the power that they're born with. We really look at people and see that they have their own talents and their own thoughts and their own desires of what they want to do with their life and where they want to share the language. And they're going to have like influences in all different areas of work that we don't have anything really to do with or any knowledge of in today's world. And we want to really just make all of our language spaces really, really open and accepting, because we want to sort of like jump over the period of colonialism and colonial treatment and the behaviors that have been modeled to us, sort of jump over that and connect through our language to a time where we are behaving the way that we're meant to behave on our lands, and the way that the thoughts that come to us on our lands as well. And those ways are beautiful, and we always strive to reconnect to those ways and really think in ancestral ways, like what would our ancestors want for us in this situation. So we're always reminding each other, and the way we remind each other is through always starting all of our learning spaces daily with really short or long called prayers in English. In our way, we're expressing chuutsqa, which is our sort of it's a connection to Creator and all of creation. When you are practicing that, and your connection is through your thoughts and your feelings. So as a being with those feelings and those particular thoughts, you experience your full connection to everything, and and recognize the the wholeness and the beauty of our universe and ways of being together as Haishkwe people. And so it's really really good to be able to both learn that way of being and perpetuate that way of being in learning spaces.
So Chana, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And Shauna.
Okay. So I'm just looking at question number 1. I feel like Indigenous people were really holistic, and so like I trying to split my storytelling up. But I think what really inspired my work and journey was going back to when I was doing early childhood education. I remember starting to read a bunch of memoirs about residential school and Indigenous like histories. I didn't have access like many. I had the privilege of these books and these knowledges starting to be accessible. But again, I had to go out of my way to have access to them. I'd buy these books. And so I remember coming across Bev Seller's book, They Called Me Number One. And I was like, whoa, like she's an Indigenous woman from BC. And I was like, this is so crazy. And so that kind of led me down a spiral of like, holy, like there's some really fierce Indigenous women out there. And so I remember through FN Warm, First Nations women for responsible for advocating for responsible mining. And then it was through there that I got connected to your name, Marilyn, and Nisquamata. And I was like, whoa, like this is really inspirational. And so I think that's really what set my set my fire off for the path that I'm going down now as a guardian and a land steward, and just a community leader, and advocate for my community and other Indigenous communities and youth. And so I remember back in maybe 2017, or yeah, I think it was 2017, I applied for a Yukon climate change community champion program, and it was led by Norma Cassie, and that was another lady who really inspired me and like really reignited that climate action drive in me. And so I was like, that was such a privilege to be able to have access to Indigenous women with such fierceness and just dedication and passion for their communities and their peoples, their lands. And so that was really exciting. And I remember, I think even just before that, before the program with Norma, I went to my first Guardian gathering, and I met, or I didn't even meet, I think I just like heard Val Courtois speak, and I was like, whoa, this is really, really amazing. And so I think like being able to have access to those spaces and women really set the stage up for what I'm able to do and what I see possible. And so I feel like I do a lot of visioning, and I think I really dedicate that to seeing what was possible and seeing what these women have really been able to create and really lead the way forward. And so I also would really like to hold up Regional Chief Kluwani Adamak. She's an incredible, fierce leader for the Yukon, and I really hold my hands up to her because she's really, as a youth, like I really feel that energy and that love that she's putting back into the youth and really making space for them at the table and really investing in us. And so one of the things I see interesting about being a non-settled First Nation, but having really close relationships with the settled Yukon First Nations, Council of Yukon First Nations, is just really being able to see the collaboration and the leadership and the just amazing things going forward. And so I think I'll leave it at that. If you have anything else.
Beautiful. I really appreciate how you have brought forward the how we look up to different women in our lives to help us to bring ourselves to that next level. So really beautifully done. Thank you, Shauna. Awesome. And Briana.
Okay, I'll get started about who and what inspired me, and then how I help uplift others. So my grandma was a single mother who raised my mom and her siblings due to my grandpa's alcoholism and abuse. Because my mom didn't see her dad that much, she didn't grow up in the Métis culture or speaking the language. I always knew that we were Métis and have been involved, since like I was 6, I'd say, when you can start remembering things. And we were involved locally, but it wasn't until I was a teenager that I started learning more about the culture, because Métis Youth British Columbia sponsors Métis youth between the ages of 15 and 30 to attend cultural and sometimes political events. So when I was 15, I attended my first big cultural event, made connections, and became very inspired. And ever since then, I've been attending and participating in lots of events. My Métis community is what inspired me to further my education and then therefore give back to community. So Métis believe in something called Wokotwin. Also Cree people have Wokotin beliefs. So Wokotwin is our natural law, and it involves kinship, relationality, and reciprocity. I'm doing my environmental work because Métis people and other Indigenous peoples are being impacted by climate change at disproportionate rates to the general public. I saw that Lefem Machif Otapemsawak was starting a project called the Mother of Land, Water, and Skies, Climate Change Impacts on Métis Women Across the Motherland. And so when I found their work, it inspired me, and I wanted to collaborate with them because I realized that there was an academic gap when you look on like a university search engine or Google Scholar, and you look at Métis women impacts of climate change, or even Métis impacts. There isn't very much research out there. And the way academia works is like traditional knowledge holders might have that knowledge, but unless that's published in a journal article or in scholarly things, it's not recognized as much. So while the women of the Métis Nation are doing the cultural work, I wanted to be able to give the academic work for other people to use and see. So looking back at Wokotwin, I'm building my relationships with Métis women, and we are giving back to each other. They're helping me with my school, and I'm helping them further their work. So yeah, community groups recognize that Métis women have faced a multitude of problems. So my data and analysis and results I find from my research will likely be of interest to not just the scholars and academic community, but also to the Métis governmental bodies, provincial, federal, environmental organizations, and even the Canadian government to influence future climate policies and initiatives. So since partnering with Lefem Machif Otapemsawak, I participated at a conference called COP15, which was the United Nations Biodiversity Conference, which had over 18,000 participants in Montreal in December of 2022. I've always participated in local and provincial events with Métis, but this was the first event at this size that I've ever gone to. So this event and the women empowered and inspired me to believe in myself that I can be involved at these levels. And yeah, I've realized that after the Métis women, we talked in a panel that we talked about living on the land, and it was well perceived by the public, and that was a big thing for me, realizing like, wow, we can do work at the grassroots, but people see us and want to see more at international levels. Another big thing that inspired me when I was young, I'd say, in 2010, the BP oil spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico. So I was 11 at this time. I know that's dating me, so you know my age. I remember how upset and angry I was when watching the news and seeing they would put like birds and other wildlife on the cameras to show how this impact was. And this was the largest marine oil spill in history. So I saw how detrimental these effects were to Mother Earth, and I didn't want anything to happen like that again. I'd say I help uplift and mentor other Indigenous youth and peers that are younger than me, because I always felt like an underdog in school and with my peers, that we were always playing that catch up. And so all the things that I wish I knew when I was young, I have been helping guide people. And if more people wanted to be involved with environment or within community, just being able to uplift those youth will help bring more people in for the future. So yeah, that's what I believe in uplifting people. Sometimes in the Métis community, people will be learning more about their culture as well at an older age. So sometimes just I like teaching people about our protocols and different ways so they can be more involved emotionally and spiritually. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And Jillian.
Hi, Anine. So my leadership journey started at like a very young age. back in elementary school. We'll start there. So I've always looked up to my mother as a role model because she was always there to help us out. Not even just us, but she would be at my family members, she'd be at my aunties, my uncles, my cousins. She'd always be there to help people. And I thought that was so cool. And I've always wanted to be like her, and I still want to be like her because she's our, I don't want to say she's like our rock in our family, but she's like, yeah, she's pretty much our rock in our family. I didn't even see how I could like ever live without her. She's just so amazing. And she's always been that way. She's always volunteered within a community. She used to do things for my school. She did things for our elders. She's always helping out whoever she can. And I think that's so important in a person, that they have such a big heart. They don't have to only extend it to their family, but her entire community. And I think that's awesome. So I always had her to look up to. And another one of my role models was my second grade and third grade teacher. She was the best. She was like, so I've always experienced bullying, and I had a lot of self-esteem issues when I was younger. So I struggled a lot trying to make friends. I didn't really have that many. Even when I did, it was hard to like hold a relationship at that age because I was things, you know. But that teacher always believed in me. She always pushed me to be my best. Even if I cried and told her I can't do it, she'd tell me, yes, you can, and you're going to do it. And she would push me to do all the things I didn't think I could do. So she's a huge inspiration to me. But when I was younger, because they were trying to eradicate the bullying problem in our school, so they'd always put us through workshops. Even all the little kids, they would put us in like little leadership workshops and anti-bullying workshops, and they had a really big impact on me, right? Because I was a victim of bullying. So I listened, and I wanted to do something better for everyone in my school. So I started creating volunteering initiatives in my school at a very young age. I was like in grade 3 creating these things. I did playground help, I did bus help, and through that it inspired more of the staff to reach out and build more opportunities for volunteers, and kids would get rewarded and stuff. So yeah, I started doing that, and it ran for a very long time. I think the school stopped it now though, so mostly because of COVID, right? But yeah, I saw problems in my school and I wanted to act and fix them. So I feel like that's where most of my stuff started. But I did have an incident where I went to high school. So we live on a small reserve on an island, right? But your first experience off reserve is going into high school. There's no high schools on the island. So at age 13, 14, you're sent off the island and you're there for like, 12 hours a day. And that can be kind of shocking. It's really shocking when you grow up in a community of your own people, your family. Like I'm surrounded by my family. I hardly think there's anyone I'm related to down here. So being pushed into a place where I wasn't comfortable, because all I've ever known was my community and on the small island. Like, and I'm pushed into a school of Jungnash, white people, like people I've never been around. It's not even a little bit either, it's thousands, right? And I'm like one of the only Native people who are in there, because not much people came to the school I went to. I chose to go to a Catholic school, which I feel like if I didn't choose that school, I wouldn't be here where I am today, thankfully enough. But there was only my best friend, 2 other friends, and that was it. There was 4 of us there, 4 Native people from my community in that school of 1,000 white kids. And at first I was doing okay. Like I loved the vibes. I loved feeling so at home in my school. And I still owe so much to that school because they helped build me into the person I am today. But I remember my first experience in religion class. My teacher was culturally aware, quotations. She was like, oh, I know you're Native. She's like, oh, that's so beautiful. I was like, I felt really welcomed at first, but as we went on, she was like, it's okay if you want to include some of your culture into our religion lessons, because religion class wasn't really just about like only Catholic people. It was to open yourself up spiritually and become a better person and better yourself, which I thought that was so cool. And I love that aspect of religion class. But there was a question where she was like, we're going to list off some things that have that are alive and spiritually alive, right? And I said, well, the water is spiritually alive because that's what our teachings are, right? Our water is alive. And she's beautiful. Oh my God. But she was like, not really. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I accepted it because like she's Catholic, right? It's a Catholic school. They're not going to share the same ideals. But I noticed like, but at the beginning, she was like, I'm so open to the idea of your culture. I want to learn more. I want to be more open up to you guys. Like we accept all cultures in this school. But being told that specifically was really hard on myself. I didn't like that, but so I kept questioning her. I was like, well, like, I just wanted to know, genuinely just wanted to know. I was like, well, why don't you think the water's alive? She's like, I don't know. And I was like, well, just my whole life, this is our teachings. And I told her like how our creation story was and how everything has life. And she's like, she got frustrated and she sent me to the office. And that began to become a regular occurrence. I got sent to the office at least once or twice a week. I could not sit in that class because we argued a lot. And I kept saying, I was like, this is my culture, guys. Like, this is, and I thought I was welcomed here. And I had my other classmates with me, my friends in the class with me, but I don't think they wanted to really say anything because like they were scared, right? This is an unfamiliar place in a Catholic school and we're Native. So nobody wanted to say anything, but I kept saying things. Like I couldn't help it. I fought with her every chance I could get. And I just didn't want to stop because like they were intimidated and I didn't want my friends or anyone in the school to feel like they're unwelcome anywhere. That's not right. But that's where I'd say most of my leaderships came in. But there's another event in high school where this is when my sister joined high school. She's my baby sister. God, I love her. I wish I could give her the world if I could. But I noticed that I didn't want her to experience the same things I did. I didn't want her to feel discriminated against. I didn't want her to feel awkward, and I didn't want her to feel like alone all the time, right? Like I went through that and I had to argue with teachers just to be more culturally sensitive about myself and my people and my friends. And I didn't want her to go through that. I didn't want her to have to struggle the same way I did to try and fight against it. So every chance I got, I talked to the administration. So the big event was mostly around where the 215 were found. It was a really hard time, especially being inside a Catholic school. It was really tough, but the big problem I had with it, they were bringing it up casually. They were talking about it like it was just another topic to talk about. And I understand, like, it's news. It's good to talk about it. I want people to know, right? Those are my people that went through that. And I want people to know, but you can't bring it up casually. And I do not want to walk into a classroom and have a white man talk to me about what happened to my people and act like he knows what happened. Because he doesn't. He really doesn't. And no person in that school had the right to talk without permission or without a proper trigger warning or anything. Like, I was shocked when he just casually brought it up. My teacher, I was like, you can't bring that up. You can't. This isn't history. This is a fresh wound. This is something that just happened. This isn't history. This happened to like my grandma, my grandpa, and they were like, my grandma at the time was just passed away that year. I was like, this isn't something that's in the past. Like, this is just recent events. Like, you can't talk about it like that. you can't just say, you can't bring it up casually. I was like, I didn't like that because it was happening everywhere. People were doing art projects about it. I was like, I understand wanting to spread the message and they had good intentions, but you can't do that. Those are my people. I kept thinking, like, what if that was my grandma in the 215? What if that had been my family? And they were just bringing up this discussion so casually in that school. I was like, I do not want to hear a white man talk to me about this. I want an Indigenous person. I want you to try and understand from our perspective. I don't want a white man trying to state false facts to me about what happened. And this really hurt me because in grade 7, 8, when I was like 12 to 13, I read all the really thick books about residential schools. I knew what happened, so I was hurting. Every day hurt to go to that school because it's a Catholic school. What was I supposed to do, right? I loved my school. I loved the community we built in that school, but I couldn't handle I don't want to say discrimination, but I felt very unwelcomed. And I did not want my sister to experience that. I had other students come up to me, like other classmates. They're like, I'm so uncomfortable. They keep bringing it up like it's nothing. I was like, I get that. I get that. I see that. I see that hurt. They're hurting, but they don't know how to express it. So I wrote a letter to administration stating, I do not want this conversation to continue. Not in the way that you're doing it. We need Indigenous people here. We need you to listen to what we have to say, and we cannot bring this up casually. And if you're allowed to discuss it, but you cannot discuss it without giving a prior warning about it. Like, you cannot spring this on us. It's traumatic events. I have generational trauma. So many other kids have generational trauma, and you can't put this up on our babies like that. That's so wrong. So it got to the principal, and it made a difference. It really did. It got sent out to the whole school board and like the whole Catholic school board for our community. I was like, oh my God. And I made a difference. He started reaching out to more Indigenous people. We had actual ceremonies held at our school. We got to learn more about my culture. We got to do it. We got to have discussions where it was culturally appropriate to do so. But going to high school is really what makes or breaks our kids. It's so hard to get off your community, especially when we've been through so much. Like, not only do I struggle with the 215, but so many other people do, and they don't even realize that they do. They don't know where this hurt comes from. They don't know what's wrong with them. And we have all that generational trauma. And it's so frustrating when I see kids who don't understand. And I don't want kids to feel like they don't have a voice. They don't have a choice to do things that they want to. They can't say anything for themselves. So I tried so hard to be that person while I could. And I want to continue being that person to support my community, because I've seen so many people struggle, and I just I don't want our kids to feel alone. I don't want them to feel like they don't have anyone they can look up to, any positive people they have in their lives. I want them to experience good. I want them to have the freedom to heal at their own pace, because everyone deserves that. So yeah, that's who inspires me. My community, the youth, my elders, my whole community inspires me to continue my leadership journey. And they will continue to do so, and I will continue bettering myself for them, so that way we have a better future. Yeah, and that's my story. Thank you.
Beautiful story. And I just want to reflect a bit on the fact that, you know, how a lot of our students have to leave home, as you shared, and it's not just a small adjustment. It's a huge adjustment most of the time. Like, a lot of our students have had to leave our remote community and go to cities, whether they're small or large, and going into big schools with the majority non-First Nations students and having to adjust to that kind of life. And I really thank you in sharing how you have made those changes that you saw, and to protect your younger sister and all students by setting out those standards for protocols that all schools should have. All schools should have those protocols in responding to such news as the 215 children or graves that were found. And that is huge. So really thankful for sharing. And I just want to add for each of you, and we'll stay with Jillian for the moment. I believe we're doing really well, and I find a lot of the times that women are able to, I guess, share a lot, but we go a lot quite fast sometimes. And just wanting to add, what are the opportunities you see for youth and young women in these efforts to heal our relationships with the lands and waters, as well as our communities, our cultural identities and languages? What are the challenges as well? And I know you shared a lot of that, but I don't know if you want to add a little bit, or.
Okay,
And that was
so opportunities. I feel like now that I'm in the position I am, there is more opportunities for youth to come out and learn their language, and there's so much more youth doing things. There's a youth on our island who's puts in proposals to run events for our younger girls. So I feel like that's the kind of thing she's doing, like girls power workshops. So there's definitely so much our youth can do. They can write proposals for our RPs. They can do things like are that girls doing, like reach out and create programs for our youth so they have that safe space to grow and learn, right? And I think that's pretty awesome. But again, the struggle is that there's a stigma around our culture right now because of the generational trauma with residential schools and Indian day school and things like that. So it's hard for people to come out of their shells without fear of judgment, not only from the world, but from even their own community, because healing takes so long. And I feel like people don't realize that. They don't think that anything's wrong, but it's there. And it's going to be there for a long time. But what we can do now is encourage people to keep reaching out for opportunities. And when they see something, they should go for it. I feel like we got to keep encouraging our youth to do that. So yeah, that's what I see.
Thank you. And I just want to also tag the note that how you put your concerns in a letter to the administration. Even that is really important, and for anyone and everyone to know that we can do the letters. Sometimes it might not be responded to, but you can always do a letter, and a letter like that can even go to the media. So thank you for that so much, Jillian. And we'll go to Briana, and it's question number 3 that I have. What are the opportunities you see for youth and young women in these efforts to heal our relationships with the lands and waters, as well as our communities, our cultures, cultural identities, language, and what are the challenges?
So I'll talk from a Métis perspective. There's so many opportunities for Métis youth to be involved. Our governmental body has been growing a lot and been offering many more opportunities. There's a lot of vacant roles for Métis youth that want to get involved at the local grassroots level, being a youth representative. And usually in those roles, you are doing initiatives that you want to do, and you work with regional and provincial representatives as well. You get to go to events, being involved in that. There's also opportunities, so I'll speak from Métis Nation, British Columbia. Once a year, they always do a cultural event for youth 15 to 30. So if you want to get involved and don't know people, sign up on social media, Facebook and Instagram. This is where they post events that you can register for. So this year, like for example, I'm going to a wellness retreat that they're doing. And this weekend, my mom and I are going to a residential school and intergenerational trauma gathering. So there's always different events coming up that are usually open for the general public or our youth specific. So if you need to meet people, you can meet connections with elders, other matriarchs, other youth, and they can usually provide resources when you ask. In BC, there's the My Eco Action that Métis Nation BC youth are a part of. So if you want to be a part of environmental work, you can look that up and be involved in that council. Challenges, I guess. I found a challenge because I live rural in the northwest of BC. There aren't as many like Métis youth that I know that are as involved. So if you're rural, you could always reach out to other people like your local chartered communities, or go to these events and try and meet people. Yeah, that's what I would say about getting involved. There's lots of different opportunities. Just sometimes you have to meet the right people to help mentor you and find these resources. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Briana. And now we move to Shauna.
Okay. So what are some of the opportunities I see? So recently I've just graduated from the Yukon First Nations Climate Action Fellowship. That was an initiative that came out of the Yukon First Nations Council of Yukon First Nations. And that kind of came out of in 2000, I can't remember, I think it was 18, Old Crow, the most northern community in the Yukon, declared a state of emergency for climate change. And so their permafrosts are melting, and so their lakes are starting to disappear. And so these camps, these hunting camps that have been used for generations are just gone. And so with that, the Yukon Council of Yukon First Nations and Yukon Region, AFN, help support doing a Yukon region climate gathering. From there, we had space for elders and youth to gather, and we were also guided and mentored, and we were helped. Us youth, we we did create a declaration and asking for a seat at the table, because it's our futures that are being affected right now. And so it was kind of that experience and being guided through that mentorship by our mentors like Norma Cassie, Joss and Joe was a part of that too. That was a really good example. And now I look back on that and I see the organization and I see the process that it took, but I'm also seeing things don't happen overnight. And so it takes a long time sometimes for this momentum to build, but then when it happens, it's there, it's the time to act. And so like a few weeks ago, we did our graduation for the Yukon First Nations Climate Action, and it was incredible. And we're really moving forward as leaders. Our website and our document is going to be available to the public around May of this year, and so keep an eye out for that. Some of the other opportunities I see that are really important for youth, I think I've had access within spaces with the Guardian gatherings and the network to really hear from a variety of different Indigenous leaders and really talking about the strength of nationhood and the importance of nationhood. And I see just within my own nation, and for an example, like how easy it is to be working in silos, whether it be fisheries to wildlife to social and health to education. In colonial structures, these are all siloed, but in Indigenous worldviews, it's holistic. We can't have any of this without each other. And so I really see the importance of not only just like nationhood of like working together, different nations working together collaboratively, but I also see like, how do we really bring a holistic view in our work, wherever we are, whether it's education or governance or just community leadership. How do we bring a holistic view? And so one of the things that was coming out of that, the first our fellowship, and I really appreciate Jillian touching on this. We do need more spaces that are available for youth that are traveling from their communities for educational purposes. We got to a point in our fellowship where it was like, this is really close. This is like scary close to what our grandparents and our parents had to deal with. But instead of like really colonial policies and structures, it's almost like it's just culture shock. You know, we're coming from communities that really take care of us and stuff, to we're going to the inner urban places where we see the highest effects of intergenerational trauma. We see it in the north, in Whitehorse. The last few years with COVID has been a nightmare with the opioid crises that we've been facing. With our fellowship, it was really Indigenous youth led, and we've had really incredible steering committee members that really went to bat for us. But over the last 2 years, the amount of deaths that we've experienced within our fellowship, just like our close relationships. And so seeing how many of my fellows have had to deal with grieving, well, close loved ones or close friends and stuff, and just realizing, we're living in a society that really does not support any of us, Indigenous or not. We are living in a society that is making us sick mentally and physically. And it's the youth that have that ability and that radicalism to call it out. And I think it's really important. And so in our fellowship, one of the things that we were talking about was for the first year of our gatherings, our in-person gatherings, we were being put in hotels. And we're like, amongst ourselves, we're like, hey, you know how triggering hotels are? Like for myself, in September, I'll be 5 years sober. My partner sobered up. He'll be 5 years in May. And so as an Indigenous youth, like talking and being able to talk amongst ourselves with other youth about like, hey, like we grew up with really high rates of substance abuse, alcoholism, and a lot of us are making these decisions like we don't want that, like that we have to make this change, this like we can't pass this on. And so even just like the later part of our fellowship gatherings, we started getting Airbnbs, and we're like, this is amazing, like being able to just like all bring our pillows and everything. We're joking about bringing our mattresses into the living room. And it was just like growing up with your cousins in your grandma's house, in your auntie's house or your house, and just being able to watch movies, laugh together, eat together, that is like, I think for us, like that's what is our strength as Indigenous people, is like that being a collective and really knowing how to take care of each other. But it's with this intergenerational trauma and colonialism and consumerism really being pushed on us. And I see us Indigenous youth from the North, like we have a really big responsibility to reach out to other urban youth. How do we help reconnect them? How do we bring them into these spaces that I really feel privileged and blessed to be where I am from, to come from the world, a strong lineage. I just got back from traveling, and even just traveling in southern BC, that my heart hurts. I physically, you know, I released tears because I'm listening to other Indigenous youth grapple with their grief of losing their land and their cultures, you know. And me being an Indigenous youth from the North, I think, you know, these Indigenous youth exchanges, we need them. We need to be able to share this information and not be siloed. Even just like I spent a few days in Toronto last week, and it was really impactful, and I appreciate my time there. Coming back, I felt the grief. I could imagine, or just thinking about the grief these Indigenous communities have and the spirit of resistance that they maintain, and thinking of all of the Indigenous people that have taken up spaces in urban settings, in academia, in law, in politics, in Ottawa, you know, like they have sacrificed so much, and we need to work together, and we need to honor everyone. You know, I often hear there's a hard time between our communities, the people that are in community and the people that are not living in community. We're making each other strong, and we can't do it without each other. And so like I really hold up those people that are in those spaces that have really sacrificed so much, their family, their life, their culture, their language, everything to get us to where we are. And now looking back to our youth, I think one of the toughest things is walking in two worlds. And I just mentioned this in a talk yesterday. I don't know what I want to do going forward. I'm really contemplating going back to school to get a university degree to see if my voice can carry more weight with that. Or do I spend my time in my community with my youth and really help bridge that connection between urban and community, where we need each other. We need each other. Different nations, we need each other. When one of us win, we all win. And so I think that's really important going forward. The challenges we have is functioning in colonial structures and institutions. How do we change that? What else? And yeah, I just mentioned it. I wrote some notes down, but yeah, walking in two worlds. I think we really need to hold each other up. You know, for myself, I remember having so much anxiety as an Indigenous youth and Indigenous women. You know, I'm like, you can't learn how to smoke a moose hide from a textbook. You need to have that hands-on experience. You can't learn, you know, I just had so much anxiety, and I felt overwhelmed and burnt out and hopeless because there was so much stuff that I felt like I needed to do. But now I'm in a place where I'm holding up those people in my community and around all of Indigenous territories that are learning their languages, that are going to school, that are becoming lawyers, that are becoming doctors, that are becoming teachers. You know, representation matters. And so really holding up those people that are in the communities, that are really maintaining a stronghold for those people to come back and learn their traditions and their cultures. And so how do we shift into this more gentle time? You know, how do we shift into being gentle warriors again? We come from such loving people and welcoming people, and I see that coming back full circle, as that's going to be our strength, not only for welcoming our own people home, but we have this gift and this message and teachings that's really going to affect and be crucial for the survival of all humans and our planet. And so I'll leave it at that. Ganesh.
Thank you, Shauna. I just want to reflect how powerful these young women are, and all of our young women, all of our young people, male and female, very powerful. And just, you know, to reflect that, so thankful, you know, you're drawing all those connections with government, plus with our culture and our teachings, and being able to come together and not be siloed. Because it's that siloed process and governance and colonial system that has created this climate crisis. And in your reflection, that crisis has also bled over into our people, into all people, where the opioid crisis and the drugs and the substance abuse, that's a part of that whole system that has created this epidemic where we are. So just, you know, for people to be able to hear our youth from their hearts, what you're hearing here today is so amazing, so beautiful, and so powerful. So I thank you all. And I will go now to chuutsqa for the same, we'll stay with the same question. What are the opportunities you see for youth and young women in these efforts to heal our relationships with the lands and waters, our communities, cultural identities, language, and what are the challenges?
True. I too have been totally exiled from my home community because of education, because of having to get exported out for high school. And I never really got to go and live at home, other than trying to go home and survive there while learning my language for those 3 years. And while it was like the most financially poor I've ever experienced in my life, that period of time, it was still like probably I had the time of my life at that time in my learning my language there. But necessary for me to work and make a living, I did have to come back out, and now I live in Port Alberni, and I've been in school again, so I'm in my last year of my doctoral program here, and that's the University of Victoria. Some of the opportunities that that are available to people now that I've been living out of my community for so long in order to learn, I'm thinking like, okay, now I'm raising my family here and I want them to be connected to our land. I was informed so much by the knowledge that is in our land growing up. How are we going to prepare our next generations to have that knowledge and that connection, and that, you know, that just deep, have that deep knowledge of the relevance of keeping that land intact and pure and clean? How are we going to have that connection for our next generations? Because so many of us all across the country are so exiled from our lands, and that's probably by design that we are. So what is ahead is not offered through like my band office or federal funding or even municipal funding or anything like that. What is ahead is a whole 12 months of just language learning opportunities for people. There's next month, we start with the first week of April, we have a gathering where we have all of our fluent speakers, all of our teachers, and we do language programming from all day and all night. We serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. People from the community come in and out. We have hundreds of people come in, and we have our Heshkut language gathering to start off. Then all of our fluent speakers, all 8 of them, are going to take on groups of learners, and they are going to mentor them for 5 months. And I will supervise all groups, and also just feed in different resources that we can use for learning our language, because all of our fluent speakers now are proficient in being a teacher or mentor to learners now. And so that's going to take our learners through summer months. And these are all just grassroots efforts. We're not getting people to pay for participating, right? We are trying to restore something that has a huge value for our people. And so we put our energies into it. In August, we are taking another month-long immersion out on the land in Heshkut Harbor, we're we're the only Nuch'anos tribe where all of our villages, communities are on the open ocean, open to the Pacific Ocean. No, like covered harbors or anything like that. So the summertime is the best time for us to go out. We go out for a month, do language immersion. People who have young children can come, people who are high school age can come, people of all ages that are, from Nuch'anos tribes are invited to come, and we stay out there for a month, and we're supported by my dad, who lives out there in Haishkut Harbor and runs an outdoor school called Huksum out there. So he just makes sure that like the other elders there, because he's 72 now, that the things that we are following on daily basis that have been checked with our elders before leaving are going to be done in a good way. And we come back in, we want to take our fluent speakers home, because some of them haven't been home to Haishkut since, there's 2 or 3 of them haven't been home since the 1960s. There is a huge economic barrier in marine travel to get from the end of the highway into Fino on a boat to get up to our territories. When it's good weather, it's super expensive to get on a boat. We were going to get our fluent speakers all at home to Haishkut village, where everyone was, all of them were in their childhoods. And we're going to invite people to come and join that week as well. And after the summer is all wrapped up, we're going to continue on with our online language class that we do in the evenings. It's got a lot of people that join in to learn and speak our language together, and we're able to cover a lot of language content through those Zoom meetings. And so we continue on every month of the year to keep people learning and speaking our language. And so lots of opportunity for people to pick it up when they have the time to do so. And then as soon as they pick it up, they can't let it go, because it's like addictive, right? Chuu.
Beautiful. Thank you. That is so important. And I really appreciate that reflection of your cultural camps, and the idea of having the fluent speakers joining together at the beginning of the year with the teachers. That's a really cool idea. We've been wanting to do like cultural camps, and I like how you do that for a month at a time, because we're thinking, well, maybe a week or 2 weeks, to begin with, but it is a really great opportunity to just be out there on the land. And with the land, that's where we learn so much easier and so much better, is what I find. Just to be out there, you can identify the different plants, colors, whatever, animals in the language. So bringing the language to the lands and the waters is really important. So I thank you for that. And I just want to say also that, just you are all so powerful. I'm so thankful to have been a part of this sharing. And of course, as all of probably most of our Indigenous ways is sharing our stories in the evening. And sometimes that's not always possible. However, it is still in the winter. So we're pretty good on that, I think. But I'm really so thankful to hear each and every one of you and the power within you. And that is one of the best ways to be able to celebrate Indigenous Women's Day. You all hit the mark and so beautifully in your sharing, in your heart, and in your soul. So thank you. I'm not sure if Ms. Doreen is back with us for a reflection. I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Sad.
Man. It was great. the inspiration is powerful, hearing the stories around leadership from these young ladies and being open to be involved and participate in any opportunities that came their way. I think that is the only way to live in today's world. And being able to be on a land, I hear a lot from those that haven't had the opportunity to do that because of either they're going to school, work related issues being off reserve. You know, you got to always remember that the land's not going anywhere. It's always going to be there. Take whatever time that you can to get back on there, reconnect with your elders at home and those that are close. The learning will always be there, but sadly we are losing our elders in our communities with the pandemic or with their health and whatnot. The drug and alcohol issue will always be there, and the opioid crisis is getting taken away of a lot of our youth. Trying to find ways, I think, like I told my sister Marilyn here, that this is one of the ways that we have to try to connect with our youth, to redirect them back to what we are, who we are as First Nations. Our survival is important because, you know, we do so well. I mean, Marilyn here has when she was in leadership, she fought so hard to gain that title in our area. All of that is good, but we are struggling big time in our community with our social issues, our teaching, our parenting. And I've heard in here in regards to beliefs, our young ones are growing up without beliefs. Without that, you are lost and you don't know who you are, where you come from, and how, you know. And then the question came up in one of our discussions in our meetings, is that, you know, how do we see the leadership in our communities today? And we kind of really think we shouldn't hesitate whenever somebody questions us that, right? We as women, we are strong, powerful in a lot of ways, but we have to find ourselves through healing on the land, healing throughout different ways that we can. I mean, it's a continuous thing, our lives, with the teachings as grandparents. And what the challenges, I mean, there's always going to be challenges. It was like that back in the day, and it is like that today. It's just something that we have in our lives, but we have to learn to find those answers, how to overcome it. And hearing these young ladies here, it has really answered a lot of the questions that I was thinking about when my sister and I here talk and say, how do we bring these things back? How do we revive the teachings and go forward with our youth? Again, there are games and whatnot, they're on continuously. My husband and I do annual healing on the land thing. We don't bring our devices. Yeah, we bring our cell phones, but we can't connect to all the social media and that. And I was telling my husband, I didn't realize that until the last camp. You know, you're a lot different when you're on the land. You're a lot more calmer. I didn't realize that you can really feel all that negative energy through your devices. Those kind of things. My daughter now, she works with the Chen crew. I think that's Glencoe. They do that reforestation, I think it's what they call it. And she's starting to notice around her surroundings on the land, the trees, the plants, you know, the shapes of you know, the trails, and she's finding these holes. It's just like, you know, back in the days, they call the giggly holes that our people used to live in. She's noticing all that. She's learning. She's actually just like what I did when, after my dad died 5 years ago. He's told me so many stories after he passed. That's when I realized that I was actually getting what he was talking about, what the land meant so much to us and how we heal through the land. And The land does not speak, verbally to us, but we can listen through it from the feelings, views, and our senses. And that's how we should continue on teaching our young ones here. And I think I pretty much said everything, but thank you again for allowing me to join you on this important webinar. And I keep you guys all in my prayers that you'll continue your journey, your teachings, and bringing this back to our youth, back in our community. Again, safe travels for those that are traveling. Take care. County.
Thank you, Doreen. I just want to also simply do a bit of a reflect on, for example, with our young people and their question on how do we support our youth and mental wellness, and all of the youth and the presenters here today reflected on that very well. And a big part of that is just being able to reach out and connect and even write the letters or whatever it might be. And a part of that too is, just being able to say hello. Take that time to reach out and say hello and give a smile. Even if it's that 1 second, 2 seconds, it don't take long. And I just reflect on that because recently I was in a hurry and there was one of our people who was kind of distraught, and I felt like, oh my gosh, if I stop and I talk, then it's going to take me forever and I'm going to be late. And it was like, no, I can't do that. I always have regrets every time I do that. So just to, even if it's a minute to talk and say, how are you? Take care of yourself. Those are really important. And we lose that through this virtual stuff and texting and all this kind of stuff, And when we see our children out there, it doesn't matter how tiny they are or how old they are or our elders, they appreciate that hello. That is that connection. So I thank all of you so much for this beautiful panel to end a wonderful series, a campfire series, and very grateful to be together with all of you on this Indigenous Women's Day. To rise up our warrior women, and I will pass it to Sadi Doreen to close us.
You did till Indian, I till nan number kay negdid. Gagos cho jigo all call that and that was it. Creator, we come here together, bringing in these beautiful young ladies with their abundance of information and everything that they bring forth for us to bring back into our communities. May we close in a good way, that we will continue to stay connected in all ways, to continue being as a team to bring in these great and wonderful ideas forth to our younger generations. Creator, we pray that we'll continue to keep our prayers strong for all those that are needed in the communities and those that are all preserved. And that's it.
So we have how many minutes left? There's no questions out there for us. So we thank you all again for joining and all of the participants. And if you have questions even beyond today, simply email Christy or Victoria, and they can share with the participants and all the panelists. So thank you again. And if all the panelists, you want to open up and say, have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciated your time and knowledge sharing. Ganesh Tish.
Marcy Miigwech, thank you everyone for watching and joining us in this information sharing.
Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah.